My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Lost Season 4, and this will be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, then come back and watch my review because I will be going in depth. And I loved the way Lost Season 3 ended. That flash forward with Jack saying, "We have to go back! We have to go back!" I thought was a really well-written, smart, and impactful moment. And I was curious to see how they would follow up on that. Because the reason why that moment has so much impact is that you think that if you get off the island, you're going to think your life is going to be so much better. And in that moment, we see that it doesn't get better for Jack. So now that idea carries over into this season, where you're left wondering, do we want them to get off the island? If this was season 1, you'd be like, yes, definitely, get off the island. But now you're just like, well, what do they have there in the real world? Do we want them to get off the island? So I do like how this season carries that main idea into this season, and it still maintains that weight throughout. That said though, almost everything on the island this season was incredibly dull. It just lacked any sense of urgency or momentum. Like, we've got this rescue crew join the survivors, and the entire time they're just like, "You're here to save us, right?" And they're like, sure. And I'm just like, oh, well, then they're definitely not there to save them. And then it takes like the entire season for them to find out that they're not there to save them. It's just like, well, no shit. Like, it was just really obvious. And it took them way too long to figure that out. And then the other characters, Locke, Sawyer, Holly, just everything regarding that group of people, just nothing really happens to them until later on. So almost this entire season, I'm just waiting for things to happen. Like in season 3, it begins with a bang. There's lots going on. What's going to happen to these characters? Are they going to escape? And this season just begins, and almost the entire way through, nothing happens. And the way that it ended, with the island getting moved, I thought was the stupidest stuff in the entire show. Like, Ben goes into this room, pushes this wheel, and moves the island. Like, I'm sorry, I know this show has always dabbled here and there in some supernatural stuff and some time traveling stuff, but moving an entire island, that just crosses a line to me. It is far too goofy to take even remotely seriously. At all. And yeah, that just really didn't work for me. And why did they even do it? Like, Jacob wants us to move the island. Okay, why? Because, I don't know, just the why of it all didn't work for me either. But on top of the stuff on the island this season, we also get the flash forwards this season, and I kind of like them at first. Like, it's a nice change of pace to see everyone's lives before the island and sees afterwards. Like, it's nowhere near as brilliantly constructed as the movie Memento, but there's similar ideas, because before now, we saw up until all the characters up until the point they got on the island. And now we're seeing their lives after they get off the island, and it's just all these moving pieces that you're trying to figure out, and I kind of like that element of this season. Like, you're just trying to figure out the fate of each character and who makes it and what happens, and you're just watching that puzzle get created right in front of you. And I like that. The best use of it is with the characters Jen and Sun, because we get a flash forward with Sun where it's implied that Sun's having her baby, and Jen wants to get the baby a stuffed animal before she delivers. And up until this point, we're counting, okay, Holly survives, Zahid, Kate, Jack. So that's 4, so that leaves 2 more. So it's going to be Jen and Sun. So I'm just like, okay, let's see this flash forward. And then when it's revealed that only Sun's story is a flash forward and Jen's is a flashback, it once again takes the formula that we know and turns it on its head and actually delivers a very impactful moment where you're just like, oh, Jen's going to die. And I like that. That said though, even though I like the flash forwards at the start, by the end of the season, I just thought the narrative started to crumble. And it's like at the start, you've got this intrigue and all this potential. And you're just watching that fall apart as the season progresses. Holy story of him going back to the mental hospital, I thought was kind of dumb. Sun turns into a girl boss type of character, which I thought was pretty dumb. Zahid and Ben become partners in this international spy thing in one of the episodes. Yes, I know I'm exaggerating there, but that's what it felt like, and I thought that was really dumb. But most of all, the direction of Jack and Kate's story is so unsatisfying, and I hated what they did with Sam Hill. I really did. At first, I didn't like the reveal that her baby was Aaron, Claire's baby, because I thought in that episode it made more sense if it was Sawyer's and they left and Jack doesn't want anything to do with that baby because it's Sawyer's. I thought that would have made way more sense. But when Jack finds out he's related to Claire, I'm just like, okay, well that makes sense too, because now he's hesitant about Claire's baby because he's related to that baby. And I get it. It makes sense. But it's just not as satisfying. In my review for Season 3, I talked about the brilliance of that last moment, and I still stand by it. Jack screaming to Kate, we have to go back. We have to go back. I thought was a really haunting moment. But what they did with that moment here, I despised. Because the reason why they have to go back isn't because, oh, I'm broken and I got nothing left and let's go back. Like, it wasn't the sign of a broken man anymore, but they're trying to make it sound like the island is calling them back. The island is summoning them. And I just think that's a really stupid direction to take this story, and I think it lessens the impact of Season 3. But let's talk about the characters now. Jack, I've liked him the past few seasons, and I still think Matthew Fox did a good job in this season. But I did not like him. I think he was really poorly written here. Now, I will say, I like in the first episode of this season, when he's got Locke down the ground, and he's got a gun to his head, and Locke doesn't think he'll pull the trigger, and Jack actually does. There was no bullets in the gun, but Jack was ready to kill Locke, and I thought that was a great moment. But throughout this entire season, we just see Jack do really stupid stuff that was out of character for me. Like, he was dumb to trust the people. It's like I said, it's so obvious they're not there to rescue them, and they're not there to do anything good. And that Jack still trusts them without reason. There's this episode where his appendix is about to rupture, and Juliet is just like, Jack, you can't be walking around. You can't move. You could die. And he's just like, okay. And then he still just walks around. Like, this guy's a doctor. He should know better. But the thing that ticked me off most about his characters this season is when they're on the boat and he gets on the helicopter with Kate and he leaves everyone else to die. That's just a completely out of character moment for Jack. It doesn't fit what we know about him. Then we got Kate, who's once again played very well by Evangeline Lilly. And I like lots of stuff they were doing with Kate throughout this season, but I disagree with the direction they took her. For example, I like how it highlights why would Kate, out of anyone, want to leave this island. She was a fugitive. She was on the run. She leaves this island. She's going back in a jail cell. When they get off the island, everyone's got someone waiting for them at the airport, and we see that Kate is just completely alone. And, it's sad to see her like that. And throughout the entire season, they were giving her reasons to stay. And for her to choose to get off the island, I don't buy it. And I really think that she would have chosen Sawyer in this season. So I didn't like the way they wrote her in regards to that. Sawyer I love as a character. He's got a few funny lines. Calm down, Chicken Little. But he's not really given anything to do this season, which I found to be disappointing. Juliet, at the end of season 3, she's the big question mark. Can they trust her? Is she evil? Is she good? What's her deal? And we got our answer. She's good. And they just didn't know what else to do with this character in this season. She just becomes significantly less interesting and really adds nothing. And there's one episode where Jen and Sun are just like, you know what? Let's just join Locke and Sawyer and them. And Juliet's trying to convince them to stay, and they're not staying, so Juliet's just like, Sun cheated on you, Jen. And don't get me wrong, what Sun did was incredibly shitty, but that wasn't really for Juliet to say, and I thought she became really unlikable in that moment. And let's talk about another big issue I have with this season, which is going to be completely off-brand for me, because up until this season, I've said time and time again that I love the love triangle in this show. I like that bit of personal drama that just keeps things interesting, puts some characters at odds against each other, gets some other characters closer. I like that angle to the show. But the love rectangle in this season between Jack, Juliet, Kate, and Sawyer did not work for me whatsoever. In season 3, they made it clear that Kate and Sawyer were having a relationship, and it just seems like they completely backtracked that here. They just took that relationship and threw it away for no good reason. And I didn't like that. I thought Jack saying to Kate that he loves her was also a recognition of the fact that she chose Sawyer over him. Which is why it's so impactful when he gets off the island and we see that those two don't have anything to do with each other anymore. That it seemed like she picked Sawyer over him. And I thought that was a really effective moment because of that. But to figure out the backstory and to find out how those two characters ended up in that position, I thought undercut the ending of season 3 a bit. I really do. I'm rooting for Jack and Kate. I think they're more compatible. They have really cute chemistry. Even though Sawyer is my favorite character, but he's not really boyfriend material, I believe is the term. Juliet and Jack don't have an ounce of chemistry, and that scene with Juliet and Kate in the tent was just really weird when Juliet's just like to Kate, Jack kissed me, you know. And she's like, oh, but it's not what you think. It was for himself, so he can prove that he doesn't just love you. And I just thought that moment was really weird. It felt really off. I didn't like it when Sawyer called Kate on her shit. You know, he's just like, oh, now that I ticked you off, you're just going to go off running back to Jack, aren't you? And he was absolutely correct, and she does, for the rest of the season. And like I already said, I really hate the direction they took Jack and Kate's story in the flash forwards. I really hate it. Like, we get Jack and Kate living together, they get engaged, and it's this super happy moment, but then the next day, he catches her talking to Sawyer on the phone, not doing anything else, they're just talking, and then the next night, he starts drinking heavily, and he just breaks up with her. No, I don't like that. Like, they just ended everything because of one fight. Shortly after he proposed. Like, it's like they were going for an emotional roller coaster in one episode, but they just didn't stick the landing in any one regard. Like, they build them up this entire show. They pay it off. We finally get to see them together. They're about to get married. They're engaged. They're happy. They're raising a kid and finding meaning through that. And then in that same episode, you immediately destroy it and just ruin it. And I hated that. Like, either go for the tragic story where Kate picks Sawyer over Jack, or give them a happily ever after. Just to go the route they did was a bafflingly awful decision. Like, it just made more sense for her to stay on the island with Sawyer, because that's what it felt like they were building up all season. Ben. I liked him a lot in season 3. I do not like his character at all this season. Now, I do like some of the mind games he plays against Soro in the early bits of this season, and he's got a few good lines like, why 3.2 million? Why not 3.3 or 3.4 or 3.5? I thought that was a funny line, and also Locke's just like, you just killed everyone on that boat. So, I thought that was a great line. And even though I like seeing Ben as a prisoner, because we see someone who's typically in control, just he's got no power over this situation. But then they decide to keep him in control and to give him all the power, and just every way they go about it is so contrived. I never bought it, not for a single second. Like, for goodness sakes, there's one scene where they go to this box that hasn't been open in a very long time. He gets a meal, lifts it up, and as soon as he lifts it up, the sun reflects off it, and someone's signaling to him too. Like, was someone just waiting on that mountain for like 20 years for Ben to one day take that meal out? Like, it's just... They're trying to make him the interesting villain. Like, he's behind bars, but he's still in control. Like Silva, like Hannibal Lecter, like Joker. But it just... You don't buy it for a single second. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about his complete lack of humanity and where they really butchered his character this season. And it's with Alex. Ben letting Alex die rid him of any humanity. Like, he has a chance to save her life, and he doesn't take it. And instead, he not only lets her die, but before she dies, he says the most awful things about her. Then he lets her die. What a piece of shit! And then later, he's just like, I gotta go back and mourn her. And then we see in the flash forwards that he's after Charles, and he's gonna kill his daughter, so he knows what it feels like. And I'm just like, you could have saved Alex. And just any emotional weight they were trying to gain from that, they didn't have. Because he just did nothing to prevent it. He tried nothing to save her. Like, spoiler alert for Arcane, but one thing I love about Silco in Arcane is that he was willing to sacrifice his entire life goal for his daughter. That scene where he discovers her on the bridge, and he's physically shaken up about finding his daughter like that, you feel for him. That scene where Savika kills Finn right before she's about to kill him, and you see him like reacting to that, it humanizes him. But there's no humanity in Ben to be found when he's just willing to let his daughter die like that. Also, in that same episode, it really bothered me because Ben told everyone to run to the trees, and then everyone just stands still for like the next 5 minutes. So I thought that was really dumb. And then there's a flash forward with him, and he picks his own name. And of course they pick Dean Moriarty, which I'm sure is a reference to Professor Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes, who's always 2 steps ahead of Sherlock. I hated that. Let's talk about Desmond. I like Desmond as a character. I think the actor who plays him does a good job. What's his name? Henry Ian Cusack, I want to say. He does a good job. But I do not like the supernatural aspects of his character. Like the fact that he can jump between 1996 and 2004, I thought was really stupid, which I know is a hot take because that's lots of people's favorite episode of this entire series, but it didn't work for me. That said, I also thought the scene at the end of the season where he reunites with Penny was actually really heartfelt. And then we've got Holly, and right at the beginning of this season, he sees Claire, that she's looking for Charlie, and he says that he's going to be the one to tell Claire about what happened to Charlie. And I thought this was going to be a really emotionally powerful moment where Holly tells Claire what happens. But then as soon as he starts to talk to her, he falls apart, he starts weeping, understandably. But like, I think the moment would have been more impactful if he stayed strong and comfort her. And the fact that he broke down just, it lessened the impact. And then, of course, he never really talks about Charlie again after that first episode. He got over him pretty quick, took about a few hours. Then in one episode, we see the numbers are back, which I've always hated that plot line. And this character's just not really motivated by anything. He has no purpose. He just goes where the wind tells him to go. Then we've got Locke, and there's one scene where John puts a grenade in someone's mouth to keep him quiet, and I thought that was a real badass moment. But he just kind of comes across as a fool. Like, I thought they could have done some really interesting things with his character this season. Like, he's in charge of his group, he's the leader, he's the jack of that group. And I feel like it could have been really interesting if we see a side of him that we haven't seen yet. Like, a much darker side. If, like, people like him, when they're given power, they go crazy over it. And I think they could have gotten some tension, some really thrilling stuff out of it. But they didn't. They just kind of make him out to be this bumbling idiot. Like, the last episode where he's walking around with Ben, they're walking around like they're best friends. Like, they're two little kids who just discovered a snow fort or something. And I think that stuff is really dumb. Then we've got Claire, who I've never liked as a character. Like I said, she cries when she finds out about Charlie, but then she never brings him up again. Like, she gets over him pretty quick. There's one moment where someone blows up her house that she's in, and she somehow miraculously survives, and I thought that was really stupid. And then, at the end of this season, like, she just gets up and leaves. She's just like, see you later. I didn't think that was satisfying. Like, I'm sure it's going to come back and play in season 5, but reviewing this season, I didn't like where they ended off her character. And then we've got the return of Michael, and my goodness, I did not like this decision at all. He has one quote where he says, "I'm not looking for money, I'm looking for a gun with bullets," and I thought that was a stupid line because you can buy a gun with bullets with money, so I don't like that. And I get what they're going for with Michael, a guy overcome with guilt and regret and just grieving, and I get what they're going for, but I do not buy it for a second, and here's the main reason why. He leaves at the end of season 2. The ship that he's on goes to the island in the last section of season 3. So within 20 episodes of season 3, within maybe a month, he goes from escaping the island with Walt, him trying to start a new life with him realizing that he can't do so, him being overcome by his grief and his regret for what he did to Libby and Anne, him giving up Walt to his mom, him becoming suicidal, all within a month. I don't buy it, and it lessens the ending of season 2 because lots of his character arc has been him trying to do better, that he's going to become the father that Walt needs. And the season just seems to take that and just throws it all away just so they can bring him back. It did not work for me. I thought the fact that he couldn't kill himself was really silly and goofy, and I didn't like it at all. And how did Tom see Michael in Manhattan? Tom was clearly on the island for all of season 3. And the submarine blew up halfway through the season. So Tom couldn't leave after that. So where did Tom find the time to leave the island for a few weeks while still being on the island? That stuff takes me out of it. And then there's one line that he says to Michael where he's like, "You lost Walt." And it's just like, no, he didn't. You guys actually went up to their raft in your boat, destroyed it, and took Walt. No. And then at the end of this season, it seems like Michael died, and I'm just like, why did they do that? They brought him back, ruined his character, and killed him off. Why? He ended up contributing nothing. He didn't add anything to this season. It's just so you can be like, oh, that's Michael, wow. But nothing regarding his character worked for me in any way. And then we got Jin and Sun, who I'm just getting tired of by this point. I just find everything regarding the two of them to be so repetitive. They fight, And then by the end of the episode, Jen says some sweet stuff. They make up. It's sweet. Rinse and repeat every Sun and Jen centric episode. I will say though, Jen learning to speak English for Sun is it's sweet. And then we've got the French lady, Carl, and Alex. And they're still the most underdeveloped, boring characters ever. And their death lacked any sort of impact, and they just ended up contributing nothing to this show. If you get rid of them, nothing changes. Bunch of the new characters didn't really do anything for me. You got Miles, and when I saw Miles, I'm just like, that's the Doctor from old. But he's not good. I didn't really like his character. Same with Charlotte and Daniel. They all lacked any sort of personality, and the whole can we trust them angle was really obvious here, and it's an angle that's being done time and time again. It's pretty much the main central idea of the show whenever someone new comes into the picture, and I get it, but 4 seasons in, you might want to try something a little bit different, and it would have been better if we knew, like if they made them out to be villains, and they tell the audience that those characters specifically want to kill the people who survived, and then we've got that tension knowing that they could try to kill them at any moment. But they kind of just make them out to be bumbling idiots instead. There's one scene where Charlotte reveals that she knows Korean, which I thought was kind of a neat moment, because then she's just like to Sun and Jen, I know what you've been saying. But I don't understand why they kept it a secret that they wanted there to rescue them. Like, just nothing about these characters worked for me. I don't think they added anything. And the main villain that they're building up, Charles Whitmore, one of the two, he just doesn't seem interesting. I don't really have any interest in that character. A few other issues I have with this season is that there's one moment where the little village is getting attacked, and there's 3 people who get shot and killed, and of course it's 3 people you've never seen before. You're just like, they brought that trick back, anytime they bring in some extras, they're gonna kill them off, and it just doesn't have any sort of impact because they're nobodies. They're just there to die. We find out the deal with the smoke monster that Ben can control it from the village. I thought that was really stupid. It honestly feels like a Scooby-Doo episode. Like, oh, Scooby, who's making that smoke monster? Okay, time to take off the mask. It was Ben the whole time? I thought that just felt really stupid. I'm going to go ahead and say something controversial here, because I know people praise The Skull by Michael Giacchino. I don't like it. I think it's overly sentimental in lots of moments. But there's a few episodes that end with the da-da-da-da. It's just so overly dramatic that it doesn't work for me. And my one other complaint that I'll mention is, it's not a complaint on this season, it's a complaint on Disney Plus. But whenever there's subtitles, there's always 2 pairs of subtitles, and it takes me off. But this season is probably my least favorite season of Lost so far. After a pretty decent season 2 and season 3, this feels like a huge step backwards. The flash forward started off with some intrigue and potential, but that entire story element starts to fall apart in front of our eyes. The stuff on the island is remarkably dull, predictable, and just lacks any sort of momentum, and lots of the characters and just seemed so mishandled this season, especially the relationships within the characters. I still got some entertainment from it. There is good moments, and I like what they're going for with the flash forwards in the island, but the actual execution of it was really bad, and Ben moving that island is such an unintentionally hilarious moment. So that's just a huge failure of an ending for me. The way it all wraps up with Ben seeing Jack after Locke's apparently dead, I don't like that. It doesn't get me intrigued to see where it goes. They're going to go back to the island because they're being summoned. The heroes are working with the villain again, and I don't know. I hope seasons 5 and 6 are really good. I hope I enjoy them, but I'd be lying if I said I was going in with much optimism. So I'm going to go ahead and give Lost Season 4 a fitting 4 out of 10. Okay, have you seen Lost Season 4? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos coming soon, and Gavin out.